Welcome to my bike shop. Yeah, so here's the deal. That one's mine. This one belongs to my girlfriend. This one belongs to one of my best friends, and that one belongs to his wife. And we decided that we're going to, at some point, do some rail trail riding. And they have a 7-year-old son, and they want to get him out and active. And one problem. Their bikes are in shambles. So I offered to fix them so that perhaps we can all go riding together. They jumped at the opportunity, and that's what this video is going to be about. We need to evaluate these bikes to see what they need and what they don't need. We'll start with this one here. This is a early 90s Miyata Valley Runner. This is a very nice bike for its time. I remember when these were new. This guy here is a pretty heavy bike. It's a chromoly frame. I remember when I was a kid, chromoly was pretty much what all mountain bikes were made of. Unless you were wealthy, then you got an aluminum frame. But now you can buy an aluminum bike at Walmart. That wasn't always the case. So what does this bike need? Well, for starters, it needs air in the tires. So put some air in the tires. I don't imagine this bike is going to need a whole hell of a lot. Maybe some adjustments due to the cable stretching. So let's cut to the chase. I'm going to get my bike pump, and we're going to see if these tires can still hold any air. Okay, so step one, we need to figure out if these tires can still hold air. Now, what I want to do before I put any air in this tire, or any of these tires, is we're going to straighten out the inner tubes. You'll notice on some poorly maintained bikes, the inner tubes, or the valve stem, is going to be at an angle. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a lump in the tire. I see this all the time on kids' bikes and bicycles that are generally not well cared for. What happens is sometimes tires are left to go flat, and they're stuck to the rim. These tires are very old and probably should be replaced. No, they're not too bad. There's no dry rot or cracking on the sidewalls. That's what we're looking for. We're going to break the tire off the bead. We're going to shift if we can. Let's put it upside down. That might make it a little easier. Let's break this tire free. Looks like we're also, while we're in here, while the tire's broken off the bead, take a look at the tube protector, or the rim band. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to straighten this out. We're going to pull the tube, pull the valve stem out, make sure it comes perfectly straight, and it actually kind of straightened itself out, so that's good. Alright, so now we're going to put air in it. Alright, so you can straighten out the valve stem by kind of going like this until it comes out straight, once the tire is free from the rim. While you're there, you might want to take a look at the rim band. There's a rubber band, or a strip, that covers the spoke nipples. And if that's missing or torn or coming out, then you may want to replace that. It's not recommended, but I have used electrical tape, a good quality name brand like 3M electrical tape, wrapped, not stretched, but gently wrapped around the rim a few times. If you don't have a rim band or anything to protect the tube from the nipples of the spokes, then you'll wind up with a puncture sooner or later. An internal puncture, no less. Alright, we're going to fill the tire up. The pressure is clearly marked on the tire at 40 to 60 pounds per square inch. And that's what we're going to go with. We're going to go with about 40, I think we're going to do 50 pounds. I think we'll do 50 pounds on this one. So that's what we'll do. On an empty tire, to connect your bike pump, put your thumb against the back side of the valve like that to keep it straight. I don't like these bicycle pumps because they never work well, but they always leak. Pump it up to 50 pounds. Once the tire is full, check it for any cracks. Move on to the rear tire. Okay, so I've just straightened out the tube in the rear tire, just as we did with the front. That one was a little worse. Now the things that we're going to be doing in this video are going to be the same things that you're going to be doing for a bike that you just bought at a yard sale, found on the side of the road for free, or have stuffed away in the garage or the attic. Essentially, what do you do with a bike that's been sitting for an unknown period of time? So once you've determined that your tires are good, just one small step for a new bike owner, you want to check a few things out. Let's see if the rims are straight. Actually, this rim is remarkably straight for an old bike. It's not perfectly true, but has a little bit of a bounce to it. Not really much. This is pretty much acceptable for, you know, just an old beater bike. Let's check the bearings. So I'm going to take the rim and I'm going to try to shake it back and forth, holding the frame with my other hand, and I'm going to feel a slight knock. Just a very slight knock. And that indicates that the bearings are probably in need of adjustment. So why don't we do this? We're going to pull the wheel off. Now I also wanted to point this out too, and in fact I can't get a good angle on it. But this wheel is not on straight. It's actually off by quite a bit. It's almost hitting the frame right there. That's going to affect your braking performance, especially on these center pull brakes. It'll affect the braking performance. The bike is never going to track correctly. That just sucks. So what we're going to do is we're going to do two things. We're going to take the wheel off and we're going to check the bearings a little bit more thoroughly. You may even pull the axle out and re-grease the bearings while we're in there. We're going to take a look at the front wheel too. What's interesting about this bike is that the rear wheel does not have a quick release, but the front wheel does. I remember seeing bikes like this when I was a kid in the mid-90s. This is not a high-end bike, but this is definitely a bike shop bike. Somebody paid quite a bit of money for this in 1990s dollars, early 90s. And it has a really cool crank that I've been wanting to point out too in the video. We'll talk about the crank later, but let's get the front wheel off, and I'll show you why. Getting back to the rear wheel bearing situation, I want to check my front wheel too. This is not a difficult job to perform on a bike. It's actually quite easy. But what you want to do is, on any bike that's been sitting for any length of time, or one that's been used a lot, you want to take your front wheel off and you want to grab the axle with your forefinger and thumb and shake it around a bit. You're feeling for any movement at all. This one's remarkably tight. There is a little bit, just a tiny bit of play. I'm not going to do anything about it because the axle spins nice and freely. You want to rotate the axle. This is with any bike, be it a higher end bike, a low end bike from Walmart that's been, you know, whatever the case may be. Occasionally this should be done. This axle, you know, it could stand a bit of an adjustment, but the grease is nice and smooth. I'm not too worried about it. This one actually has rubber seals on the axle, which has kept it nice. We're going to leave this one alone for now. That rear one, however, that one might need a little attention. So I'm going to go ahead and put the wheel back on. And then we're going to look at the rear wheel. But before we do, why don't we talk a little bit about quick releases? Now, what I like to do is I look at all the other quick releases on the bike, and I try to keep them all on the same side. This particular bike only has one quick release. So how do you tighten down a quick release properly? Good question. What I do is I snug it up. Just keep it nice and loose, but snug. And then I take the quick release lever and I line it up with the fork, and then I lock it down like that. And there you go. That is a well-attached wheel. Now, is it straight? I'm going to say it's good enough. It's good enough. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. Let's take a look at that. And what you want to do is pay attention not really to the tire, but you want to pay attention to the rim itself. And let's line up the camera with it and tighten that up. Here we go. See, you don't really see a lot of wobbling. It's not going up and down. It's not eccentric. You're looking for eccentricity. You're looking for trueness. And it's pretty good for a bike of this caliber. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Now, being an older mountain bike, this particular unit is equipped with a bolt-on rear axle. First thing we need to do is release these brakes. Now, for those of you vintage mountain bike guys, gals, this bike has some pretty cool period components. X-Age brakes. I've got a Shimano BioPace crank. I have not seen one of those in a long time. And I think this is the first iteration of the BioPace. There's a whole bunch of articles on there out on the web that discuss the BioPace crank in depth. And we'll take a look at that in a second. So let's get the rear wheel off. Now, I got some flat wrenches here. These are bicycle wrenches. Anyone who owns a bike should have a set of these. You can get them pretty cheaply on the web. It's like a 14 millimeter. No, it's going to be a 15 on the rear. Of course, these are really good for hurting your palm. I'm gonna grab a socket, but they're really good for installing lock nuts on the axles, not necessarily pulling wheels off. All right, so let's do this. We're gonna use I'm gonna grab my wrench set from the garage, but this will work. So we need to definitely correct the fact that this wheel is on crooked. That shouldn't be a problem. But I am concerned. I found a little bit of play in that rear wheel bearing. So I do want to see what's going on there. This bike has been sitting a long time, and it looks like you should actually, on this one, deflate the tire. So let's do that. I'm going to deflate the tire to get it out because it's in the way of the brake. Cat did not like that.
You gotta warn him.
What am I supposed to say to him? Move?
I'm gonna make a loud noise and then he'll move.
I did. And he moved. See the logic in the process. Okay. That should just pop right out. There we go. Oh, wow. That is interesting. These brakes. I have never seen a bike with brakes like this before. But, okay. Almost there. Almost there. As we rip the derailleur off the bike. On second thought, don't do anything I do, because you're just going to get hurt. There we go. Okay, so we got the rear wheel off. Let's check this axle out. Yeah, there's a little bit of play in that axle. I can feel it. I can hear it. We're going to pull this axle off, and we're going to re-grease those bearings. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take these mounting bolts off. have to grab a couple wrenches. I need to loosen up. This is a lock nut here. There's a bushing between the lock nut and the outer bearing. Oh, you're not even on. Okay, it's not. So there's a lock nut right here. Then an aluminum bushing, and then we've got the outer bearing race. So what we need to do is loosen up the lock nut. What I'm going to do, not the tools that I would normally use, but that's what I have in front of me. So I'm going to use my what size? That's a 17-inch. Every bike will be different than what we have here, but that shouldn't be too tight, and it's not. I'm going to take that lock nut off. Now be careful at this point because these are loose. In this bike, the bearings are loose, so we don't want to lose them. So we're going to be very careful when we take this apart. Lock nut off. Here's our aluminum spacer and our bearing race. It's especially important when working on a bike that's older and has been out of production for a number of years, using parts that are relatively obsolete. You don't want to lose anything if you can help it. Because losing parts on a bike like this could be catastrophic because we won't necessarily be able to find the parts anymore. So I just want to make sure that I point that out. Now we're going to take the axle out. The bearings are still captive in there. And believe it or not, the grease is in really good shape. Actually, this whole bike is in pretty good shape overall. It's just been sitting around for a long time. So I'm going to just clean the axle up. Let's see. Now what I would do, here, let's take a look inside. What do you? All right. So you look down in there, you see our little bearings. These are easier to get to when you pull the chain ring off. I haven't had one of these apart since I was probably 12. I haven't had to pull one apart since then. But there's actually a wrench you use. It's like a spanner wrench, and it just locks into these two. Not a spanner wrench. There's a term for it. I can't think of what it is. And this is reverse threaded, I believe. Fortunately, I'm looking down in there and I'm liking what I see. I don't have to pull those out and clean them. I probably should. But what we're going to do in this case is we're going to just throw some nice fresh grease in there. Then we're going to readjust the axle. Yeah, these are very clean. That's in pretty good shape. I'm going to just take my clean rag and some of that old grease out. You see one of those bearings? Oh, they're falling out. They're falling out. Oh, there they go. Okay. So we're gonna. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put the axle in the other. Put it in the opposite direction. I'm gonna pack the other side with fresh grease. I'm gonna let these fall. Just let them fall. The other side looks really clean. There was no grittiness in there at all. No crunching or grinding or anything. So this is multi-purpose grease. This is not bicycle grease. They do make special greases for bicycles, but when you're just going on rail trails at 5 miles an hour, you don't need to spend $1,000 on special greases and exotic oils. So I'm going to put some nice fresh grease on the outer race. I'm going to tack some. By the way, I'm doing this repair job for free, so anyone has a bone to pick with me, just know that I'm doing this for free, out of the goodness of my own heart, for a good friend. So, just pop that axle in there, and we're going to drop our bearings in on this side. The grease actually really helps to hold the bearings into position. We'll drop these in one by one. Do I have that on camera? Yeah. Now, normally what you'd do is if you had them all out, you would pack them in first into a nice bed of grease. But we don't have that luxury. So put some grease on the outer race. I'm going to thread my outer race back on. Now this one, it really doesn't need, you know, all that much work. This one's in pretty good shape. Again, the only reason I pulled it apart was because I had to take the wheel off and I had to readjust the races anyway. So I figured let's take a look and see what's going on in this guy and see what we have here. So it's going to spin real nice. Do hear a little bit of a greediness though. Get the wheel spinning. Now what I'm feeling for is any tightness in the bearings. So I'm going to back that guy off a little bit. That's nice. This is something you feel for it, you know? You get a feel for the correct bearing tension. It's a very, very precise process. Yeah, that's good. I think that'll do her. Maybe a little tighter. You can always play with it later. So let's get the spacer back on. And I'm going to clean all that grease off anyway, so don't worry. Too tight. So what we're going to do is we're going to over tighten it by hand just a little bit, and then we're going to take our bicycle wrench, we're going to stick it on the race. There's my 14. No, it's a good 15. And that guy. Then what we're going to do is we're going to back it into a lock nut. Let's see how it looks. Oh, yeah. That's right on the money. Perfect. Sounds good. No movement. Just perfect. I think I'm gonna tweak it a little bit more. Now I want to point out that we're not restoring this bike, just making it operational for occasional neighborhood, you know, bike cruises. And that is all this bike is going to ever be used for. Perfect. Oh, that is just fantastic. So there we go. We've just solved, well, one potentially major problem. Well, hopefully not creating any more. All right. So we're going to clean this up. We're going to clean everything on this bike. It definitely could use it. We're going to make this bike look as close to, possibly close to good, as new as it possibly could ever be, given the budget, which is $0. So, I like it. I like that. So now we can put the wheel back on. We're going to fill it back up with air. All right, so what we're going to do now is before we pop that wheel back on, I'm going to clean this frame up a little bit. I'm going to take some WD-40. I'm just going to kind of clean up everything I can see. Anything I can get my hands on. Brake caliper. This chain's a little nasty, but it's still a good chain. It's not that bad. We're going to clean the frame up a little bit. WD-40 works really well at removing any old built-up grease and oils and nastiness. It's also very cheap. And maybe on this bike I might put a coat of wax on it, I might not. I'm going to put this back on, and I'm also going to show you how to adjust the rim. See, on this bike the rim is absolutely incredibly out of adjustment. Let's get the chain out of the way here. Drop it in. There we go. Okay. You know what? Alright, so let me show you what I'm talking about. You won't find this on an inexpensive Walmart bike from this time period, but you'll find it on a higher end bike. Now, I've never seen a bike, I don't work on a lot of, when I was a kid, we were working on Huffies and, a couple of Raleighs and some Magnas and stuff. Nothing like this. Now, this bike, again, it doesn't have the quick release skewers. It has a bolt-on rear rim. But what's even more interesting is it has these adjustable stops in the dropouts here. And you can precisely adjust the position of the wheel with these thumb screws. But it looks like they were in the right position to begin with. However, the wheel had been taken off at some point and not put against the stops. Kind of funny. So we're going to leave it right where it's at. And all we're going to do is we're going to tighten it down in that position. That's where it should be. Although, I'm looking at it, I'm eyeballing it, and I think that this side needs to come down just a wee bit more. So I'm going to pull that thumb screw out. And I think I was a little overzealous. I think that's where it's got to be. So let's put our hardware back on. You'll notice that these washers are ribbed on one side but not the other. They're actually ribbed for the frame's pleasure, not for the bolts or the nuts pleasure. So you want to make sure those ribs are against the frame, is what I'm saying. And use your thumb and forefinger. Make sure that the wheel is up against the stops. Otherwise, there's no point in having them. And we're going to take our ratchet and just tighten her down. And see, it moved a little bit. Yeah, I don't like that. It moved as I was tightening it down. So let's try to not let that happen, huh? That one's tight. Bless you. Okay, that should do her. Oh, listen to that poor chain. Now, we need to put air back in the tire, but you know how that works, so we're going to skip that step. Alright, let's try this again. So we're flossing the, in case my camera stopped a long time, we're flossing between the gears to remove any grit, grime, and just general, gunk. And I just figured out that using a microfiber cloth like this, although it costs more to replace, it does a better job because it doesn't get caught like the terry cloth does. Who would have thunk it? Okay. There we go. We're not really concerned what the derailleur is doing. It's immaterial to what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. Now what I also do is I go ahead and I clean the jockey wheels as well. That's pretty simple and straightforward. What I'm going to do, put it in drive mode. We're going to pinch the jockey wheels with the rag, like that. I'm using my thumb actually. And we're just kind of clean all the built up grease. Look at all that crap. Clean that right off. On both sides. Now, I'm probably not going to use this rag anymore. It's pretty much, no good. Can't really get the other side. The best thing to do is, in this case, if you really care about that, is to just pull the jockey wheels off and clean and grease them. It's always an option. There we go. There we go. Look at all that crap that just fell right off of there. I think we can go ahead and reconnect brakes in the back. This is an unusual brake set. I've never seen anything quite like this. Montrig, or no, they're the X-Age Mountain. So X-Age was a Shimano package, I believe, back in the day. It was probably their lower end or middle grade, something like prosumer mountain bike setup. Now these cables are pretty rusty. If this were my personal bike, I would be replacing them just for vanity's sake. It's not really necessary though. And I just noticed that this boot has fallen off and it goes way the hell down here. There we go, put that back on. Alright, now they're rusty. Another thing you're going to notice on this bike, all the spokes have a light coating of rust on them. These are steel spokes. You don't see that anymore on a good bike shop bike these days. They're all stainless, even on cheaper bikes. In fact, this bike right here, which is the husband's bike, this is a fairly low-end bike. This is one you'd buy at, say, I think he bought it at LL Bean. But even this bike has, I think those are stainless spokes. And even my bike, which is a $340 special, has stainless spokes. So, but back in the 90s, steel, good old-fashioned steel, was the name of the game. Now I want to show you guys this crank. I've been meaning to point this out. This, I remember seeing these on a set of hybrid, like a husband and wife bike set that my parents had. It was a Trek something. But it had the X-Age Biopace crank. Now the Biopace crank is an eccentric crank. They're oval-shaped gears rather than circular. And the idea was that the exertion would change based on the position of the crank. The torque would change. So the effort is increased in this position, and then the effort slowly decreases to make it easier to swing around to when you can push down harder, and then the effort is increased, and so on and so forth. At least that's the idea, I think. Was it a good idea? Well, do you see it on every bike today? No. But they do still make a version of the Biopace crank, and I believe it's available on custom bikes and higher end models. I haven't seen one personally, but I know they still exist at some level. Alright, now we're going to do our best to kind of clean the chain. Now I don't have a chain cleaner. They do make chain cleaners, but I don't have one. But what we're going to do is we're going to try something a little bit. I've done this before. It's worked relatively well. It's actually giving me kind of a hard time here because you don't want the wheel spinning, but for some reason, well, let's just do this. You don't want to go too fast with it. You don't want it to get ahead of itself. You don't want to get rag caught in your derailleur either. But this is how I clean my chain. Now that's a light clean. Heavy cleaning is when I take the chain off the bike and soak it in gasoline. We're not doing that. Normally I would do it that way. I would pop the chain off the bike. I have a chain tool. And I would soak it in gasoline. Let it dry. Take it out of the wow, this chain is in really poor shape. It's I just noticed some links are getting stuck. So it's going to take some oil and a lot of riding to get this chain back to where it's got to be. So, alright, now we've done that, let's get some oil on it. What do I use for oil? Chain lube? Nah. No. I know I'm going to catch hell for this, but remember, we're not spending a lot of money here. I'm not going to go out and buy chain lube, chain lube is good because it doesn't fling off, and it's just the right viscosity to lubricate the chain unhindered. So I just use a little bit of 3-in-1 oil. This is how they used to do it in the old days, before we had all those fancy zebra oils and whatever. Yeah, this chain link right here. This is the bugger. This one's enough riding on this bike, and you'll free it up though. You ride the bike enough, it'll free itself up. But yeah, this chain's in pretty rough shape. It needs to be worked. It really does. It really needs to be worked. Shift it down a bit. Get it spinning. But you see how the derailleur gets kind of stuck? See that? Yeah, that's not a good thing. See that chain link? I just saw it come through again. That link will free up with time. I get the impression that that link might have been stuck on one of the jockey wheels for quite a while. So, try to shift it through the other wheels here. Let's see if it is. There we go. That axle's nice, huh? That nice new grease help it out a bit. So once we've done all that, we're going to go ahead and take our rag and we're going to clean off any excess oil. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to oil it one more time because it was so starved for oil. I'm going to kind of drench it a bit. I'm going to let that oil do its thing, get where it needs to go. And then, a little more. Yeah, this bike needs to be ridden. That's what it needs. Alright, let me go grab my rag. We're going to then clean off any excess oil. Okay, so now that we've had our fun, this chain now has too much oil on it. So that's going to get flung all over the place. So we got to take our rag once more. We're going to clean off the excess oil. Just like that. Just get any excess out of there. It could cause us a couple problems down the road. Okay. Now, we can't adjust the derailleurs well, the bike is upside down, but we are going to definitely need to fine tune them a bit. And that is next. But while we're down here, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a look at the bottom bracket. The bottom bracket is the bearing that supports the crank. Now, we're going to give it a slight back and forth shake. We're feeling for any play. Don't feel any play at all. The bottom bracket is in pretty good shape in this bike. I like it. I like it a lot. In fact, I don't want to give this bike back, but I have to. It's not mine. And again, we're going to clean the crank. WD-40. I'm going to wipe it down and get between the fingers and the spokes. Clean it off. Like that. There we go. Make it look pretty. Most of this is for vanity and vanity alone. It's a beautiful bike. I love the color. Really beautiful bike. Definitely a radwood era bike if there ever was one. I just noticed that the jockey wheels are squeaking, so I'm going to put a couple drops of oil. Those just have a sleeve bearing inside. A little bit of oil won't hurt. It's just a little sleeve bearing. That's all it is. On these lower end derailleurs, I'm sure the higher end ones have, you know, probably sealed ball bearings, but it's not the case here. I cleaned the axle of the hub. I cleaned the hub off. I'm going to clean the wheel, clean that up a little bit too, and then we'll work on getting it adjusted. Alright, so now we're at a point where, because the brakes are on the bottom of this, well, underneath the bike, we're going to make our adjustments from underneath. Alright, so our brakes are nicely adjusted. I have, now on this particular unit, and most brake handles, you'll find the adjuster right here. Sometimes there's a backing nut, sometimes there isn't, and you just want to get them just right. The user of the bike may want to loosen them up a little more so there's more pull. Depends on who the owner is and how they want the bike to feel. Alright, so I cleaned up the rear wheel a bit. Get a good look at it. It's nice and shiny again. So we're going to go ahead and do some adjustments if necessary. We're going to run it through all the gears. I did some research on this bike, and it turns out it's actually, I was pretty right as far as its era and its pedigree. This bike is quite sought after, actually. So let's start off. We're currently in the highest position of the this is a very old-fashioned shifter. These do not have fixed positions, so they kind of move in and out, so you don't have to precisely adjust the derailleur quite as much, but we do have to swing it out a little more in the third gear position. So we're going to find our high gear adjuster, which should be clearly marked. H and L. Yeah, there's some rust on those. Let's see which one moves it. I think it's this one. Let's see. Yeah, that must be our low. Oh boy. Yeah. No, that's our low. This is our high. These are kind of crusty. Well, alright. Okay, we want this where it is. What we need to do is actually do a cable adjustment here. It's got to be pulled out a little bit more. So for that, all we got to do is just loosen this right here. And let's see, are we pulling or pulling? Pulling or pushing? Not the right size. Let's try this guy. No. It's just so packed with rust. There we go. Alright, so yeah, it's got to be pulled a little more. The cable has stretched. So we're gonna crack this loose. We're going to pull. See it around a little bit. It's really not what I wanted to see happen, but it's okay. There we are. Best done if you have 3 hands. Where is the wrench? Man, talk about dinosaur engineering in this bike. So, as I was saying, this bike does have a pretty decent pedigree. It's a fairly well-built Japanese model, obviously, given the name. The company pulled out of the US in about 2000. And this bike was manufactured between 1987 and 1989. Because this is a triple-butted chromoly tube frame, this is one of the later models. It was likely made sometime in the year 1989, give or take. Just thought I'd point that out, which is kind of nice. Because it's a good bike. But as we've observed, it is made with some quite interestingly old technology, for better or for worse. The shifters leave a bit to be desired. So let's see how that looks. Pull the derailleur out as far as it can go. See, that's still not enough. This derailleur has to swing out more. So on a non-indexed bike, what you do is if you're getting chain rubbed, say in the middle gear, all you do is just reposition your front derailleur. So this thing is way out of whack. This thing is way out of whack here. Let's see here. There we go. That's the one. That's the one. There we go. Now that one, we can just reposition the shifter accordingly. But now it won't downshift, so let's fix that. I just noticed this adjuster was in all the way and it shouldn't have been. Alright, so I found out that the rear shifter is indexed. The front shifter, not so much. Still don't know what this does. F. I don't know what F means, but anyway, we'll figure that out. So, what I've done is I've disconnected the cable on the derailleur, and I've given it some lubrication. We're lubricating this whole cable, and that'll make it work a little smoother. In fact, we should be doing that to all of them, in fact. So, word of the wise. A bike that's been sitting, again, cable lubrication is always a problem. And what's nice about this wire is it wicks up that oil and stores it. Kind of like a little self-reservoir. You gotta get the cable good and soaked in that oil. Bubble and boil. Okay. There you go. Can you see that? Did I get that on camera? Probably not. Put the cable back into its stay, and we're going to reconnect it to the derailleur. I ran it through the rear gears, and it looks to me, in my unexpert opinion, we have not much to worry about with the rear derailleur. It's actually shifting quite smoothly. The front derailleur was really a big challenge here. Get the cable. Really though, these cables are rusting, so they probably should be replaced. It's just my opinion. I'm not planning on doing any of that work. But it's not really a safety issue at this point. It's more of a nuisance. So I want to clean this up a bit too while I have the cable out of the way. LED. Let it do its thing. A lot easier when there's nothing in the way. So as I was saying, this bike was made likely in either 88 or 89. It's a little older than I thought, like about 2 years actually, which is pretty damn close. I do know that this color scheme was definitely straight out of the 1980s. If you grew up in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. While I was just a little kid, all of my toys were bright, lavish colors. Everything was bright, bright, bright. Just a little historicalness there. Alright, so we got the derailleur and it's all the way out position. Let's get some, while we're here, I'm probably going to get some steel wool. I'm going to give this derailleur a little N01. Got this cable as tight as she can go. So what's the problem now? Well, the problem is still not swinging out far enough. When it's in its highest gear, we should have no chain rub. So here's what I did. We disconnected the cable and I drove the adjuster on the shifter end in all the way. So that's going to give me some more cable travel if I need it. Make sense? Okay. Here we go. We're in our low gear. Things are good. Shift down. The rear is indexed and it's running pretty good. Well, it's struggling a little bit. Let's get it back into second gear. Yeah. It sounds to me, if I eyeball it a little bit, it sounds to me like it's going to have to probably let's get it all the way down. See how it's rubbing in fifth gear? Yeah. That means that the derailleur is too far in and you need to drive it out a little bit. So we're going to go into its low setting. We're going to drive it out this way. Just enough that it doesn't rub too bad. And we're going to run it all the way back to first. And we're just off the mark. So we're going to take that screw, we're going to pull it out just a little bit. There we go. Just a hair. There we go. Perfect. That's where we want it. So we're going to back through the gears. I don't hear any chain rub, do you? Okay, good. And I think we're on the mark. So, sorry about my arm being in the way. Okay. So we're good there. Now, all we got to worry about is the high speed, the high mark. A little bit of brake rub too. Okay. So let's do this. Put it in second. Yeah, you know something. Okay. Here's second gear. Now in second gear, this is where you're going to be doing most of your traveling, when this is right here. When the center chain ring is or the crank is on the center chain ring. Let me move my camera. Okay. All right, let's try that again. So, run back down through the gears. Okay, see, this is when you start chasing your tail. You've got a situation where the center position you know what? I think it might actually be indexed, but it's just very worn. I do feel a slight index right there. But it yeah, that's not bad. I think I figured out what that is. That might be an adjuster. That little. See, now it's rubbing over here. So now we got to play with a cable position. It's a never-ending game of cat and mouse with these things. So if I yeah. It's a very unfortunate situation with these shifters because they aren't precise really at all. They're kind of shitty actually. These shifters have got to go. I mean, honestly. They're very, very, very temperamental. And loose. Yikes. It's a very loose shifter. Let's tighten that guy up. There. Snug it up. Okay, so our center chain ring, we just haven't quite dialed it in right. Now it won't even go. Oh, there it goes. So what we need to do, the cable's slacked up quite a bit, huh? That's out of adjustment again. Alright. Retension it. There we go. Okay. Maybe I didn't get it tight enough. Let's try that. Okay. Ooh, third gear's nice. Yeah, I think we got it. I think we got it. No, huh? Does it have to go out more? It does. Okay, that's not a big deal. We can do the thumb screw on that. But now it doesn't want to move. That's fine. I can play your game. Still not coming out enough. Not swinging far enough. Because this guy is out of whack. Telling you. Sometimes. Looks like the derailleur position is correct. I'm gonna pull that cable tension out just a wee bit. There we go. Nope. Nope. I think it's at its hard limit at this point. Oh, there we go. There we go. So that's now. Oh, there we go. Got it. Bingo. Now let's run it back down. Second gear. First gear. That's granny low over there. This is an improbable gear combination where you've got granny low down here and you're all the way at the top over here, or bottom over here. Improbable, but you can fiddle with the front shifter to get it right. Okay, now we're going to run it down. See how we do there. Okay, and I can fiddle with the shifter and get it perfect. Done. Okay. Ooh, my back. My back hurts. I'm telling you. Okay, so we've pretty much just achieved as best of an adjustment as we can get with this bike. We've got a very iffy front shifter. Yeah, it's just imprecise. And this one being a very early Shimano SIS, which is the index shifting system they had back in the day. Kind of the great granddaddy of what we have today. It's just, you know, it is what it is. But my goal is to get the bike running to a point where under normal operation it won't grind. It won't grind. The gears, or the chain wheel and the derailleur lines up where it needs to be when it needs to be. You know, but you know, we're dealing with a fairly historical, you know, early modern bike that has some equipment that is just so outdated. Some componentry that is just incredibly outdated. And kind of experimental, like this BioPace crank. This was the early BioPace crank, which proved to be ineffective from what I've been reading. And, you know, these were quickly shuttled, or scuttled, and redesigned. They actually switched, so I'm really bad at explaining stuff. So it's designed so that the torque is where you need it. You know what I mean? So the effort is where you're more likely to have that energy, that, you know, that inertia, if you will, where you need it most. And that's the idea behind these BioPace cranks. They're very unique, and I think these are starting to get kind of rare as these bikes get scrapped and recycled. It even has an Italian water bottle holder. Nice. A Vetta. Ooh. A Vetta. I know the seat post is way too low for the rider of this bike. I will have to have her readjust that. There's no way she's that short. When you're riding a bike, you want, the rule of thumb that my father always taught me from his days in bicycling was you want to be able to fully extend your knees. Otherwise, you're going to wind up fatigued with knee problems. And I always wound up, when I ride, well, I don't do much of that anymore, but when I was riding bikes a lot, that seemed to be true for me. So this Valley Runner will run once again. I have a few things left to do. I have to readjust the front brakes, but we've gone through the bike pretty much stem to stern. One more thing I want to do, and that is to check the head tube bearings. Now, the head tube bearings on my bike were maladjusted, so there was a lot of shake, a lot of play in the head. I don't think that's going to be a problem here. It feels pretty tight, but I'll show you what I do for that. With the front brake applied, you want to shake the bike back and forth. Now, I know it's on a rubber band elasticy thing, but you're feeling for any play in the headset, and I feel none. It's good and tight, and when I pick it up, it doesn't feel notchy. It doesn't favor any position over another. Those bearings are fine. I'm not going to bother doing anything with those. They're pretty good. So I think at this point, this bike is ready to rock and roll. I just checked the front brake adjustment. It's perfectly good. I'm going to see if they want to get some new hand grips. These foam grips are falling apart. pretty typical for an old bike. I would expect that. So this Miyata, not to be confused with the popular Roadster, this thing has many miles left in her. Many miles. It's a bike that I'd be proud to own. And I've thought about actually going out and finding a nice old bike like this to fix up. Not this one particular, but one like it. And kind of go back to the bikes that I grew up with. Ones that were cool when I was a kid. But this thing's cleaning up real nice. This is good quality paint. This bike sat in a basement. And that's why it's in the condition. It's in a damp basement. And you're going to get surface rust pretty much everywhere. You're going to get surface rust, you're going to get dust, and it was crying shame that that's where it was left for so many years. But it's good that they're taking some interest in it and they want to ride it again. So just gotta finish my cleanup job, and we're going to be moving on next in a different video. We're going to be moving on to the Schwinn, which again is the husband's bicycle, and it's not as nice, but it's more modern. It's nice in its own way, but you know, it's more of a modern bike. This is a Chinese bike. It's made in China by, I believe, Pacific Cycle. This is the last of the OG Asian bikes. Well, they still make nice bikes in Japan, I believe. Oh yeah, it even has plastic hand grips. This whole thing, I would just replace all of it. I would put, maybe keep the brakes, but put new pads, new cables, and new handles, new shifters. I would just do the whole thing. They're probably going to get new handle grips. I'll send them they're all about Amazon in that family, so I'm going to give them an Amazon link for some new handle grips. I'll get those replaced. It'll be a nice bike. Alright, well, thank you for watching, and hope you guys have a good day. But yeah, as a sneak preview, we're probably going to do handle grips on this one. Yeah, I would do handle grips on it. We're going to this is made in Taiwan. We're going to do handle grips. We're going to do basic tune-up, clean-up. This one's, because it has more aluminum on it, there's less rust than this guy here. And so we're going to do a couple things there. He's even got a suspension seat post on this bike. So it's pretty well equipped, but it's not as high quality. It's lighter. Sure it's... wait a minute. Maybe not. No, this does not have an aluminum frame, does it? No, that's steel, baby. That's steel. This is aluminum. Much higher pitch. Yeah, this is a department store era Schwinn. It's not a bad bike though. Don't mistake what I'm saying as saying it's a bad bike, because it's not. But just not a bike store bike, which there is a quality difference there. But once again, notice the modern. These are both all-terrain mountain bikes. This guy's got all the cables on top, whereas this one, they're routed the old-fashioned way down the bottom. So that's one of the key dead giveaways that this is not of this time period. So anyway, I think we're done here. I'm just gonna maybe give it a test ride tomorrow and then have them pick it up, and then I'll start working on that. We'll get a video going on that. This one's gonna need tire work. This one's gonna need a tube or a patch. I might have to patch one of the tubes. He says he pumped it up and it went dead pretty quickly, so we're going to have a good look at that one. Well, until then, I think I'm going to call it a night.